In-N-Out has its own political philosophy that some people don't like, or maybe just because it was at a certain intersection where people didn't want that kind of a retail establishment there. But there were protests. I'd be curious if this young man was protesting there, or if he somehow, agreed with them or identified with them. I don't know, but I have a feeling it'll be something much more indirect, much more seemingly inane to those of us whose syntaxes connect in a normal way. But obviously his frontal cortex not fully developed. It's certainly not now. I think that's where the bullet wound up. But and we can get a little bit more into the scene itself and how some armed civilians came in to help out and make him run. But this man's a coward. All of these mass shooters, spree shooters, are cowards, and they have deep-ridden psychological issues that probably go back their whole life. And we're going to have high school classmates they're talking to, grade school, someone that maybe worked with them, maybe the one girl he ever dated, and who knows if he even dated girls. I don't know, and I don't care about that part, but there's going to be some issues that come out that he just was a non-functional, from a personality perspective, he was highly dysfunctional within our society.
3 people were killed, 7 wounded. There was a 24-year-old offender, I'm not even going to mention his name, who was identified as a shooter, and he ultimately died by suicide. Police believe he acted alone, but they haven't confirmed any motive yet. The question for us isn't just what happened, it's whether there are behavior indicators, in my feelings, that may have told us something that was wrong before August 1st. And Jim, I've never reviewed one of these cases where there wasn't something that told us that this could have been an outcome of this individual's life after they committed the act itself. So, you asked a lot of times I asked, I'm reviewing the video, reviewing some of the information. I wonder, was that restaurant In-N-Out, was that really the actual target? I mean, it just recently opened and the attack began at the drive-thru. But the offender fired at people outside the restaurant too, and the surrounding area, including in the vehicles and people that were charging their vehicles sitting in their car. So, it raises several questions to me. If In-N-Out isn't a target, then was the location selected because it was crowded? Did he, a lot of these offenders look at target-rich environments. So I also have to wonder, did he have a connection to this restaurant in any way? Or was it just an opportunity? It was just chose my opportunity. Jim, when you look at this location and the way he moved from the restaurant to people outside the restaurant, does this feel more like a targeted attack or simply like someone looking for a place where they could create maximum casualties?
Including killing himself, which I think was the ultimate goal. Suicide by cop, certainly suicidal ideation. And we're not going to spend too much time talking about suicide. It's a tragic event when it happens, but damn it, take yourself out and leave everybody else alone. Why not just find yourself a field, take your high-powered weapon with you, which quite frankly was almost larger than the kid himself. I'm calling him a kid, young man. And looks like a skinny kind of a runt. I wouldn't be surprised if he's an incel, involuntary celibate. So obviously there will be a psychological autopsy undertaken. We've explained that here before. The physical autopsy naturally is done by forensic pathologists, blood tox, all those type things. What do they find? The manner of death, cause of death. With his case, it looks like gunshot by his own weapon. But they're also the profilers, the behavioralists, other investigators will be looking at his entire lifestyle, everything that led up to this particular day, and certainly critical moments in the last days, weeks, and months leading up to this. I do know the In-N-Out just opened, I think, a week before. I do know there were some protests there in front of the place, people picketing it for some reason. I don't know if In-N-Out has its own political philosophy that some people don't like, or maybe just because it was at a certain intersection where people didn't want that kind of a retail establishment there. but there were protests. I'd be curious if this young man was protesting there, or if he somehow, agreed with them or identified with them. I don't know, but I have a feeling it'll be something much more indirect, much more seemingly inane to those of us whose syntaxes connect in a normal way. But obviously, his frontal cortex not fully developed. It's certainly not now. I think that's where the bullet wound up. But yeah, and we can get a little bit more into the scene itself and how some armed civilians came in to help out and make him run. But this man's a coward. All of these mass shooters, spree shooters, are cowards, and they have deep-ridden psychological issues that probably go back their whole life. And we're going to have high school classmates they're talking to, grade school, someone that maybe worked with them, maybe the one girl he ever dated. And who knows if he even dated girls. I don't know, and I don't care about that part. But there's going to be some issues that come out that he just was a non-functional, from a personality perspective, he was highly dysfunctional within our society. And he somehow got his hands on a weapon. It made him feel big and strong. But other people with their own weapons who seemingly knew how to use them were ultimately what led to his demise.
Jim, there's been some public information that I found when I was researching this that I find interesting because it offers a contradiction to what we're talking about. It was a former college acquaintance of the offender who described him as introverted and pretty chill, whatever that means. He attended a college in southern Idaho, but he didn't graduate. He was impeached. Impeached from student government because he didn't participate. And some of these searches that they did on him found no criminal history in either Idaho or Arizona. Now, you and I both know that there is no profile for a mass shooter. However, if I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this type of offender, some of the things that I'm going to look at in his background, I'm going to look at, what's up with the introversion? Was he socially isolated? What happened in school? Why did he fail out of both student government and school?
Not to mention impeached, whatever that means at the college
level. Exactly. In other words, I'm thinking he was thrown out of the club. That's what I believe it means. But apparently, all these individuals have grievances, and they're probably not visible to outsiders. However, there's always going to be changes in behavior prior to the attack. I want to know, what did he say? There's always, Jim, you and I talk about this a lot, leakage. There's always leakage of behavior. Did any of that changes or leakage occur to people that were close to him? Did he all of a sudden he have a fascination with weapons, or did he always engage with weapons? Was there a sudden withdrawal? Was there changes in his online behavior? What was he searching for online? Did he have a recent acquisition of weapons? All these things are pre-behavior indicators. But the biggest one that I would want to know, looking at his background, is if there was a triggering event that occurred in his life a couple weeks, a month, a couple months beforehand that caused him to go down this dark road.
Ray and I've gone back in time with the two of us a few times on our various podcasts, certainly called Red and others. And I learned a lot from the Brown University shooting back in December. You and I were on Cold Red. We did some other news shows about it. That person held a grief for 25 years from the university itself. And he held it almost 30 years going back to Lisbon, Portugal, for the professor that he wound up killing at MIT. I was always the one, I said it in the earlier case we discussed, how many weeks or months or years did someone go back holding these grievances, these issues. So this guy is young, obviously. I think he's only 23 or so. So it's not going to go back decades, but it could certainly go back to, his childhood in the Bensalem Police Department. You talk about being taken by the Gary Heidnik house.
Right.
I went by the Abt house, ABT. That was a family that was wiped out in I believe, early 1976, maybe 75. Before I was hired as a police officer, I had no role in that investigation. But about a year or two later, senior officers would take me by the Abt house, and two of the brothers were still alive. The guy, I hate to say names, but George Gauchent was the shooter. He lived down the street from this family, and these two brothers used to pick on him 20 years before, maybe 15 years before. He waited 15 years to come back and take out these two brothers. They happened to be out of the house that day. One was in Bucks County Prison. The other one was out doing something else, and he wipes out the rest of his family. The Apt family, the mother, father, few kids, the dog, the daughter's boyfriend, who had nothing to do with it. Any of them had to do with tormenting of George Gauchent as she was growing up. So my point is, these issues, that was a targeted attack. The Brown University was a targeted attack because he had problems with the university itself in the early 2000s. This does not seem, at least so far, the Twin Falls In-N-Out shooting to be targeted. It seemed random, which is also not surprising with mass shooters or spree shooters. This is kind of in between. It probably would have been more mass shooting in one location, except the armed citizens came up and made him move left and right and alter his behavior there for his target acquisitions. So we will find out what bothered this young man and what were his issues, none of which justified what he did. And
Correct.
again, if he didn't like himself and wanted to kill himself, it's always a sad story. But man, just take yourself out and don't even make it suicide by cop, where officers could be injured, of course, and don't take out other people at the same time. And but the mentally disturbed among us, for some reason, their brains don't connect like others, and this is the course they choose. And hopefully, we can get more answers as to how to somehow better predict this type of behavior in the future. But as you said, there's really no one profile that fits these kind of guys. And but maybe we can slowly start building at least some benchmark, some clues that say, hey, this kid next door to me, or this nephew twice removed, maybe I should call the police on him and get weapons removed, something like that. Maybe someday, Ray.
Jim, you mentioned the surveillance video and some of the bystanders that actually got involved in this. And talking about that video, when I looked at that, you see him approaching the drive-through multiple times, shooting at employees, returning to his vehicle because his gun jams, and he grabs a rifle, like you said, and then he continues attacking outside the restaurant. I mean, some of the things that I saw in that was that he was very methodical, he was very calm, and it kind of goes because there was a witness or someone that said this individual by the name of Jordan Salinas. He said that Williams appeared to be very calm when he was aiming his rifle at the vehicles. However, which I think is important, is that the change in his behavior once people start firing at him. So, here's something, Jim, that we talk about. What does the apparent calmness tell us? But perhaps more importantly, what does it not tell us about the offender's psychological state? When you think of that, to me, Jim, it says that, I think he's a suicide by cop just waiting to be taken out. But, a lot of people, multiple people, who took action, including this Idaho State police trooper and armed civilians, they ran towards the gunfire, which police officers do. But the thing here is that should ordinary citizens really become part of this? And I think it's a bad precedent, although I understand, but there could be a lot of problems that could come from that as well.
Yeah, you mentioned a few things here. Ray, I know you and I have talked, and we've both been, with about 65 years between us in law enforcement, and we've both been in tactical situations, guns pulled, and I've been around when gunshots were fired. I never had to pull my trigger in anger, as we like to say, but I still envision every time I go out, whether I'm armed or not. I don't have to announce that here, but I envision how I would handle a certain situation. And what concerns me the most is the the concept of friendly fire, because the police are getting a call over the call comes in through 911. Police dispatch puts out the radio call. Man with a gun, shots fired, active shooter, whatever the terminology, at this mall, this shopping center, this church, and we'll say one of us is there armed. I want to make sure that when the police show up, if I'm taking shots at the bad guy, that the officer doesn't see me and think I'm the bad guy and take me out. And maybe when all the investigation is done, it may be a clean shooting. I'm using air quotes if you're only listening, not watching. But I still don't want to be a victim of even a clean shooting on a law enforcement officer's part. So I know I've told people I'm with, if it ever came down to it, call 911 and say there's an FBI agent on the scene. Don't even worry about retired. I'm not trying to arrest anybody or pretend I'm something that I'm not.
Right.
Just FBI on the scene, blue striped shirt or solid blue shirt like you're wearing. And just to let them know, armed, and let the officer know at least to think twice when they're acquiring their target and they're making sure. And I would know at the same time, keep my gun holstered until I know I have a practical, lethal shot at the individual. So a little bit off on a tangent there, but I am not going to be the one that says I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I am not going to be the one that says if you happen to be armed out there and you see something and you think you can safely neutralize a situation. And let's be clear, neither police nor these armed civilians or off-duty police, they didn't shoot this guy. But
Right.
It seems they clearly forced his hand. And I heard the interview of the one guy. He had a suppressor on his weapon. The thing was about 18 inches long, fully legal, no doubt, in Idaho. He's very clear because he had eye contact, I believe. He was relatively close. He said, yeah, the guy was pretty brave and tough when he was firing bullets and no one's firing back. But once they were whizzing by his head, that's when his whole demeanor changed. That's when his whole sort of persona changed, and he had to, run left, run right. And basically, I'm not sure at that point if he had acquired any more victims or not, but it certainly wouldn't have been the mass casualty count that it could have been without these men who did in fact confront him. So there's even a state trooper. He must have jumped over the counter. He's inside the In-N-Out. He has a white T-shirt and he has a weapon in his hand, and he's getting everyone down on the floor. He's still standing. He's looking out the drive-through window. I mean, hats off to a number of people in this case that definitely saved lives. And my heart goes out to the friends and families of the murdered and injured here. All for what? For who?
Fine,
we just don't know yet.
Jim, because you engaged in this thing, there was a question that came from one of our listeners. Should an armed civilian engage in an active shooting? You kind of answered this. From a tactical perspective, my first advice is don't assume that being armed means that you should engage. Your primary responsibility is survival, and you get yourself and all other innocent people away from the threat. You don't only consider engaging in this type of situation if there is immediate and unavoidable threat to your life or someone else's life. There's no other option here. Hopefully the person doing this has some training that they're able to do that. I'm thinking they're carrying a gun. I'm hoping they have some training. But Jim, you mentioned this too. The greatest danger to not only you as a civilian, but to law enforcement officers is friendly fire and mistaken identity. Okay? Look, every time one of these things gets called out, there's always a call out that if we're there and I'm not in uniform, plain clothes officers on site. Responding officers are not going to know who the armed civilian is here, guys. An individual holding a firearm may look exactly like the shooter to the officers arriving. And remember, the officers are under tremendous stress. So I would not engage if you're a civilian. Like Jim said, I would avoid moving in any direction toward responding officers as well. Put your gun in your holster, right? And just stay somewhere where you're safe and follow instructions of the officer when he calls you out. Get your hands up. Don't go to your weapon. Remember, things are very, very stressful during these times?
Yeah, I'll just close with that question that, in the last 25 years, if you're off duty or you're retired like us, or even if you're a civilian with a weapon, you witness some situation like this, unless that gun is right in your face, the first thing you want to pull out of your pocket, not your holster, is your cell phone and get on
Yes.
911 and give an accurate description the best you can. If there's a vehicle, even the tag number, and if you can stay still and protect yourself and whomever you're with, that's fine. If other people are being actively shot and engaged or murdered, that's a decision that the individual who may have a weapon will have to decide. And I'm not going to lay out a rule here. I know you're not either, Ray, but I would say go on the phone first. Be that voice, be that inside voice to the 911 dispatcher to talk to the police by radio. But if you think other lives, the police aren't there yet, other lives are at stake, you think you have a shot or an opportunity, be willing to take it. Most of these people operate on their own, but always be aware of perhaps they have backup, they have a co-conspirator with them, and you take out one guy, there's his buddy. I'm thinking like a terrorist event, where there's shootings involved, and there may be, some kind of a planned attack for, political reasons of some sort. There may be more people then, but so just always keep your eyes open for other bad guys, also other police. And once you see the police pull up, again, if you are armed and you've engaged the bad guy, put the gun back in the holster and put your hands out. That's all the police officer wants to see. And so, yeah, use your own discretion when it comes to
Good advice, Jimmy. I'll tell you. Another question that came through, Jim, asked of me by the audience: what would be your advice to people stuck in their cars or gridlocked during an active shooter? Well, first of all, if you're stuck in your vehicle during an active shooter event, it's not the greatest place to be because you're still open, but it's generally better protection than you getting out and running somewhere where you have no idea where the threat is. So if you can drive away, if you're in your vehicle and you can drive away, by all means do it. If you're not able to do that, then I'm going to say stay in your vehicle, lock your doors, turn off your engine, all right, and duck underneath, all right, as best you can, because remember, these offenders are looking for people that they can see. If they don't see you, they may move by you. I think what you have to understand, there's a difference, what we used to use from a tactical standpoint, there's a difference between concealment and cover. Concealment is not cover. A car can provide you some protection from certain threats, but it's not a guarantee against gunfire. And I can tell you that because I've been involved in one shootout where gunfire was into a vehicle and some of the rounds went through the vehicle and struck the occupants and others did not. So always remember, follow the instructions of law enforcement when they arrive. That's the most important thing to do.
I would also say every situation has to be decided on its own merits. You're in a long line and your car cannot go anywhere, and you see someone with multiple weapons, long rifles, whatever, and they're just walking down car to car to car. You also have to ask, now, do you have kids in the car? Do you have other people? It gets so complicated here. But ultimately, the goal is to survive, and you don't leave the kids in the car, of course. You try to get them out. But do you also want to be just a sitting target in a fetal position on the floor of your car? I don't think you want that either. So it's a tough call, and if we all had bulletproof glass and the car doors locked, of course, that makes a big difference. But that's not how our cars are designed.